And welcome into another edition of Drawing a Crowd, the business of sports tourism. As you'll notice, I am flying solo today. My partner and the host of this program, Terry Hazeltine, the executive director of Maryland Sports, is away on a sports business conference. Is that a good way to say that, Craig Thompson?
It is. It's a sports business conference. Terry and his team are representing Maryland, going to get some great ideas to bring back to us and make sure that we're still leveling up in terms of what we're bringing to the state and to the country.
All right. That is the voice of and the personage of Craig Thompson, the chairman of the Maryland Stadium Authority. And Craig, before we dig into our agenda for the day, I know you wanted to say something about the passing of Herb Belgrad, who was the first chairman of the Maryland Stadium Authority, a position you now hold, and what he meant to the position and some of the things he accomplished in that position, aside from his great career as a lawyer.
I appreciate that, Stan, and I do. Ladies and gentlemen who are viewing should know, and most absolutely do, about the tremendous legacy of Herb Belgrad. He was the first chair of the Maryland Stadium Authority. He was appointed in 1986 by then Governor Hughes, and Governor Schaefer reappointed him around the time that Governor Schaefer and others had this vision about bringing baseball or keeping baseball in the city and in the state. And Mr. Belgrad was a critical part of the talks, the strategies, the negotiations with the Orioles to develop Oriole Park at Camden Yards, and then also lay the foundation for bringing football back to Maryland and to the city. And so just wanted to take a moment to discuss his important legacy. He created the environment that we're all enjoying right now with the Orioles and with the Ravens. His was one of the most important voices for maintaining the structure of the B&O warehouse, which is absolutely one of the crown jewels of the ballpark itself. And so just wanted to take a moment to recognize his legacy. He recently passed, as you mentioned, and wanted to make sure that the folks know how important he was and is to Maryland sports.
On a personal level, did you get to know Herb well? You know, sometimes you're in a position and you may reach out or he may reach out to you to give you some advice. Was he a mentor of sorts? I know John Moog has been helpful to you.
John Moog's been extremely helpful, and John succeeded Herb as chair, so I know they had a really, really good relationship. I wouldn't consider him a mentor. We didn't know each other well.
Yep.
He was also an attorney. As you know, he was at Tidings and Rosenberg. So I knew of his legacy, not only with the Stadium Authority, but in the legal community as well. But last year, the Orioles and Stadium Authority honored Mr. Belgrad with an on-field celebration, brought him in, and we did have a chance to talk around that time. And we did connect and had a chance to talk with he and his family and some other close friends. And so we had stayed in touch since that point. So I would say, since then, since we meeting him last year, we've had a chance to connect, but not much before that, candidly.
All right. Let's dig into our agenda because it's a meaty one. You just recently passed the 2-year mark in your position as chairman of the Maryland Stadium Authority. Can you talk a little bit about what your role encompasses and any highlights you feel you've hit so far in those first 2 years, Chairman?
Sure. Well, as chair, I serve as the chairman of an amazing 11-person board. 7 of our members are selected by the governor, and 4 are selected by the city leader, Prince George's County leaders, and our 2 chamber leaders, Speaker of the House and President of the Senate. And we operate such that we're looking at the 2 privately owned or 2 publicly owned facilities that we have, M&T Bank Stadium and Oriole Park at Camden Yards, as well as some of the minor league ballparks around the state. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But we've also become, Stan, over the last several years, a major driver in the construction of not only schools, but the Department of the Legislative Services in Annapolis. schools in Baltimore City with our 21st Century School program, and then our Built to Learn program, which takes that concept of building these wonderful revolutionary schools and the IT and everything else in these schools throughout the state, and driving the sports and tourism through our Maryland Sports Commission and Maryland Sports Corp as well. And so we really run the gamut of sports and entertainment and construction in our state. And as chair, I serve as lead on some discussions, negotiations, strategizing. I serve as an agent of the governor. And so our job is to make sure that we're fulfilling the vision of the second floor of the State House in Annapolis with the governor and his team. And as you know, the governor is a major sports enthusiast and has a great vision for sports and tourism and economic development in our state. So we're proud to be partners with the second floor and with Governor Moore.
I wanted to ask you one thing. You mentioned the two stadiums, and right off the bat, you said M&T Bank Stadium and Oriole Park at Camden Yards. It was almost a badge of honor by Peter Angelos not to get a naming rights deal. I don't think he ever even entered into any discussions of it. The practicalities of that today, with the fact that the Rubenstein Group paid $1.7 billion for this team and need to get a return on investment for their investors and their partners and all that. Do you think within the next 3 to 5 years there's every good chance that we'll have a naming rights deal to our stadium? And I know you probably aren't privy to any talks going on yet, but aren't the practicalities of that just rich with possibilities?
Well, that the practicalities of it, Stan, are sometimes outweighed by the optics and the history and tradition.
Yeah.
And so it's a fulsome discovery or discussion that we have to have about that. But you're right. I've not been privy to any conversations about that. That is a team decision with Mr. Rubenstein and his investment group. And so I really wouldn't be qualified to answer in terms of timing for it. I do know there's been, more openness to discussions about that, but that wouldn't be my story to tell, and I'm not sure what or where the discussions are at this point.
All right. As we get into our discussion today, I did just want to get a general conversation. You were privy to the Angelos Bisciotti relationship, even though you dealt with John, not Peter, in the 2 years you've been running things. But can you say what the relationship now is like between the Rubenstein Group and the Bisciotti ownership? Is it a healthier relationship?
Much healthier, as far as I know, and I can tell you as far as where I sit, Stan. Most of my day-to-day dealings are with Katie Griggs, who is the president of business operations for the Orioles, and Sashi Brown, who is the president of the Ravens. And I can tell you, in terms of negotiating and talking with and meeting with Katie and Sashi, and also knowing that they're communicating much more, it's a much healthier relationship, a much stronger relationship. And a much more collaborative relationship, which is what we need at the complex. And so I'm really happy to see the communication level, the transparency, and some of the vision building, quite frankly, together, because all of us have the same goal to make Baltimore a great destination for high talent in sports.
That brings me to my next topic, because I'm sure that relationship is key to how Maryland Sports Commission fits within the goals of the Maryland Stadium Authority, Maryland Tourism, and sports tourism in general. Correct?
Absolutely. And I have to tell you, I played sports as a child. I played baseball, basketball, and some other sports. And
were you any good?
I was actually pretty good. I'm sitting in his chair now as a lawyer and chair of the Stadium Authority, and not on the field. So I guess there were some caps or some limits to what I could do. But I had a lot of fun and played up to high school and loved it. Baseball was my favorite sport. I enjoyed basketball as well. Still love baseball more than any sport ever. But one thing I didn't notice, certainly as a youth, and then even as a father of children who played sports, and we would travel to Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and all over the place, that we were actually bringing economic development and economic power to those states where we stayed, spent money on retail, on housing, or some kind of residential, and staying for a while. And the power of sports to draw not only unity with our communities and getting young people involved, but they're also economic drivers. And so Maryland Sports Commission, Terry Hasseltine's group, they're doing an amazing job of making Maryland one of the primary destinations for sports, youth sports, and tourism, and driving that economic development that we've been talking about. So it's absolutely important from sports and entertainment perspective.
If you could explain to our viewers on the podcast the money that has been allotted, the $600 million per team, provided that they sign lease extensions. Where does that money come from, Chairman?
Well, it's a bonding authority that the MSA can issue bonds that are backed by the Maryland State Lottery.
Okay, and that money, the Ravens are fairly well along in their expenditure. They did some upgrades to M&T this year, mostly along the lines of customer, amenities and things of that nature. Would you be able to characterize? Are they complete? Have they spent their $600 million, or is it 50% of it spent?
Well, they're segmenting it, which
Yep.
is a very smart way to do it because it's being done during the off season, as you know.
Yep.
And we have the Black Wing, we have the Miller Lite garden and rooftop. There have been some significant changes to the club level, which I'm sure you've seen. And then there's also the press box relocation, and the differences in terms of seeing that. Also in construction is the North Plaza. So that main entrance where the Ray Lewis statue is,
Yeah.
that main entrance, that North Plaza, there's going to be a huge renovation there, much more inviting, a bit more a space to tailgate, and also for some retail. And then also in August of 25, there's going to be a change in the end zone suites, which is a very exciting one that at some point you may want to have Phil Hudson or some of the facility guys to talk about, and also service level club changes also.
All right. That's the football side of things. I know that the ownership, this ownership of the Orioles, wanted some time to assess what they felt were the needs and the areas that they want to spend some money on. Without giving away their plans, are they fairly well along their planning stage? And can you give us any insights into the types of things that they might be contemplating?
Yeah, well along with respect to this type of planning is difficult to say. So I'll be candid about that.
Yeah.
I do know that there are some meetings taking place. We're engaged in those. The team is engaged in those. And there's some really solid and really creative ideas that are being thrown around and being debated and discussed to make sure that the fan-facing amenities are top-notch, but also some of the player-related and the player development amenities are great as well on the inside of the facility. So you can expect some changes and some great and creative ideas in all those areas. But in terms of the specifics, not too much to make public at this stage, other than what we've been talking about and what the board for MSA has already voted on, and that's the upgraded sound system.
Yep.
And there'll also be, some talks about the video board, which has been a conversation for many years as well.
Do you think that's something that they will address during their off season? Do you think that we'll see some changes by the 26th season? I know we've seen the upgrade in the sound, the first level upgrade in the sound system, but some of the changes, you think they'll be in place for the 26th season?
I think the idea is to have things in motion,
Mm-hmm.
and to have things well along, at least in the first tranche or the first series of ideas for renovations. So hopefully that will be where we're landing around that time.
All right. Let's move on to something really exciting, and I know it's close, near and dear to the heart of the First Lady, Governor Moore's wife, Dawn. If you could talk a little bit about the 150th Preakness coming up within about a month, and the excitement surrounding, and I know she's been a very active participant in the push to create this Preakness Festival.
She has. First Lady Moore is an absolute visionary, and she's mentioned this publicly many times after visiting the Kentucky Derby and seeing the week-long events, the week-long series of events leading up to the actual race. Truly impressed her and caused her to dream big about having something similar in Baltimore for the second leg of the Triple Crown. And so the idea was born to work with us, to work with the Maryland Thoroughbred Racing Operating Authority, the MTROA, with a number of public and private entities to create a committee to look at how best to promote the Preakness, but also to send the message that it's more than just a race. And this is about community, it's about empowerment, and it's about economic development, but also demonstrating just how wonderful Baltimore is, just how wonderful Maryland is as a destination. And so there's a week-long series of events leading up to May 17th when the Preakness occurs, and having just family events. There's a golf event, the governor's crown at one of the country clubs here. There's going to be a major concert down on the pier, a family day, and some other events in different parts of the state. And so the First Lady's just been an amazing leader, getting together the right people in the right places to make this vision a reality.
Now, this is the first year of this. Do you think this thing has a chance to grow into something even bigger in the years to come? Now, I know next year the Preakness won't be held at Pimlico, but when it does come back to Pimlico after the refurbishments and rebuild there, do you think this has a chance to be even bigger than this year's event?
Well, not just a chance. That's the plan,
That's the
and
plan.
we're gonna try to manifest that as best we can. But the idea is to build this foundation for Preakness 150 to turn into the Preakness Festival, and so this would be long lasting, along with the continuing evolution of Preakness itself and Pimlico itself, the Pimlico area itself. But Preakness 150, of course, pays homage to the fact that this is the 150th running of the Preakness.
You mentioned the area, the Park Heights area, the Lower Park Heights area. Is the plan when Pimlico is reborn? Is the plan that somehow that's going to benefit that area economically?
Absolutely. And the Park Heights community is a solid partner, a consistent partner in the talks about what goes on surrounding Lower Park Heights, and the areas, the streets, the neighborhoods, bringing businesses, encouraging investment, and making sure that the structures that are drawing more people to that area are structures that the community approves of and will be helpful and beneficial to the development of those communities.
Okay. The plan is that the Preakness in 26 will be held at Laurel.
Correct.
Will the Preakness be back in 27, or is that up for some discussion and the practicalities of how long the construction takes?
We'll be back in 27. So the idea is we'll have 150th here in Baltimore. 2026 will be in Laurel, and then 2027 will be, as you noted, back in Baltimore.
Okay, that's exciting. Before we let you go today, and that's exciting stuff about the Orioles or Ravens in Pimlico, because I grew up, within a 10-minute walk of Pimlico Race Course, and it was a large part of my youth, too
That's
large a
great.
part of my youth. But I will
But
ask.
we want to keep it a part of your adulthood as well.
Okay, well, let's get. We'll have to get
All
going on
right.
that. Chairman, before we let you go, the MSA has some other projects underway. I know you do stuff, as you mentioned before, on schools and so forth, but they were very involved in the building of Meritus Park down in Hagerstown, which I
Yes,
haven't been to yet. I promise I'm going to get there this year. But
it looks great.
there's projects. I hear it's really quite an amazing ballpark. But
It is.
there's work in place that just broke ground at the Bay Sox Stadium, the Delmarva Shorebirds, and the Aberdeen Ironbirds.
That's correct. Well, the Aberdeen Ironbirds will take place shortly, but we already have underway some work at Arthur Purdue Stadium in Salisbury. That's where the Delmarva Shorebirds play. We broke ground in January, and we've had several iterations of development there. You also mentioned the AA affiliate, Chesapeake Bay Sox in
Yes.
Prince George's County. We just had the groundbreaking there several weeks ago. $50 million investment by the state. MSA is going to be responsible for the build. And we're working with the team and Greg Baroni, who's the owner of the Bay Sox, and his wonderful team. $50 million in renovations, a major sports performance center, which is going to be an integral part of the development there, scoreboard and some of the surrounding fan-facing and player development things that are going to take place. Very, very exciting down in Prince George's County.
Is the funding for those stadium upgrades in Delmarva, Aberdeen, and Chesapeake Bay Sox in the Prince George's County, is that from a bonding mechanism as well?
There was a state law that was passed in 2022 that set aside about $200 million for renovations of minor league ballparks. And for the most part, they were all with the idea of bringing the minor league ballparks up to a certain standard that was set by Major League Baseball, by MLB. And so our state legislators set aside funding to make sure that we were able to enhance our ballparks, our minor league ballparks, in such a way that they were compliant. And what we did was, for both affiliated and for some unaffiliated teams, that was what we did with some of the state funding and with the bonding authority that we have.
All right. Sounds great. You know, we started off talking about the first chairman of Maryland Stadium Authority, the passing of Herb Belgrad. I have to say, you've only been in the position 2 years, but a lot of this stuff is going to end up being kind of the legacy of Craig Thompson in this position. It sounds like your plate is full. Is this something that you want to see through during the Moore administration? Or is one term, like 4 years, going to be enough for you? Because I know you're an incredibly busy lawyer like Herb Belgrad was.
Well, I appreciate that. I serve at the pleasure of the governor, and as long as Governor Moore would have me, I'll stick around. There is a lot going on, Stan, with the schools, with legislative services, with some other construction. We're even doing some demolition of buildings to make some of the areas in Baltimore City safer. And so, absolutely, with everything that's going on, would love to see it through, and would love to continue making a manifest as well as we can, as much as we can, the vision of Governor Moore.
Well, thank you for being a guest today on Drawing a Crowd. Even though Terry Hazeltine wasn't here, I know he's very close to you, and you two work, you're like cute, as Bruce Laird used to say about him and Tom Matty, they're Q-tip tight. So I know that.
Well, Terry's doing a great job, and we'll get on him for not being here today.
All right. Thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate you. Thanks to your listeners.
All right. And that's going to do it for this edition of Drawing a Crowd, the business of sports tourism. Hope to have Terry back with us in May. Don't see any reason why he wouldn't be. That's it for now.